So here we want to factor 64x to the power of 6 minus y to the power of 6. So because this lesson's about sum or differences of cubes, you'll notice that we can take the cubed root of each term, and there's subtraction between it, so it is a difference of cubes. And that's method 1 to factoring this. Okay. So, as a difference of cubes, 64x to the 6 is really 4x squared cubed minus, and y to the 6 we can rewrite as y squared cubed. Okay, so that is a difference of two perfect cubes. So then we can use that difference of cubes pattern. So it would be 4x squared minus y squared, and then we'd have 4x squared all squared plus 4x squared times y squared plus y squared all squared. Okay. So that's just following that same pattern, and then we can simplify this a little bit. 4x squared all squared is really 16x to the 4. Multiplying those two terms together there, we would get 4x squared y squared. And then squaring that last term would give us y to the power of 4. And you do always want to check to make sure when you factored something that it is fully factored. And what you'll notice here is that this first term actually isn't fully factored, because 4x squared minus y squared, that's a difference of square. So we can still keep factoring that one term. Remember, difference of squares, we take the square root of each part. So square root of the first part is 2x, it goes in the front of each bracket. Square root of the last term is y, it goes in the back of each bracket. One gets a plus, one gets a minus. Okay, so that's factoring that first bracket there. The second bracket would just stay exactly the same. That should be a 4. Okay. And then for this last term here, we don't know how to factor that, and so we would be done right now. So this is as far as we know how to go. So we started out by recognizing that there's a difference of cubes. In the middle there was an additional difference of squares that we had to factor, and then now it was fully factored. Method 2 would be if you recognize that both of these terms also are perfect squares, so they can be square rooted. So if you recognize this first as a difference of squares. And so we could write 64x to the 6 minus y to the 6 as 8x cubed all squared minus y cubed all squared. So that is a difference of squares. And then we can factor this using the difference of squares pattern. So we take the square root of the first term, that's 8x cubed. That would go in the front of each bracket. Take the square root of the last term, y cubed. That would go in the back of each bracket. One would get a plus, one would get a minus. And what you'll notice here is that we're not actually done yet, because that first bracket is actually a sum of cubes. And the second bracket is a difference of cubes. So we can actually factor each of those brackets one step further. Square root of the first term there is, or sorry, cubed root of the first term I should say is 2x. So that's our a value. Cubed root of that last term is y, that's our b value. Then we would have our a squared we'd have our AB, we'd have our B squared. And because it's a sum of cubes, the signs would be same sign, opposite sign, always positive. And that is the first bracket factored. So that's our sum of cubes. The difference of cubes is actually going to be exactly the same, just it's going to have the signs that match up with the difference of cubes. So it would be 2x minus y, and then it'll be the 2x squared, so that's 4x squared, plus 2x times y, so 2xy, and then plus y squared. And if we simplify this all, we get 2x plus y, 4x squared minus 2xy plus y squared times 2x minus y times 4x squared plus 2xy plus y squared. And there it is, fully factored. You can check each bracket. We can't go any further. You'll notice that you do end up at actually a more factored form this way, just because of the order in which we did things. Both of these would have been perfectly acceptable because we don't know actually how to factor that using the knowledge that we have to get this other form. Okay, so both of these answers, depending on which method you chose, would have been perfectly acceptable answers. So that is the end of the lesson, and you guys can begin the homework.